But as promised, we're going to get an update this morning on U.S. Army Special Operations Aviation by the Deputy Commanding General, who is Jon Tussing, and he's representing General Alan M. Pepin, who, unfortunately, he is on a directed assignment by the Department of the Army. But the good news is John's here to give us an update. John, the stage is yours.
Well, good morning, everybody. Yeah, I was pretty excited when General Pepin told me I'd get to come to Quad A, and then he mentioned the speaking part a little later on in that conversation. Of course, it was a one-way conversation. But yeah, I'm very happy to be here and represent our unit, our Special Ops Aviation. And General Munn, I just want to say thanks, sir, not just for today, giving us the opportunity, but really for all the things that you and your team has done and continues to do on behalf of Army Aviation. So I'm here on behalf of General Pepin, who wishes he was here, I'm sure. And I've got my team, our team together with Command Sergeant Major Billy Webb and our Command Chief Warrant Officer, CW5 Dave Greenwood. And what we'd like to do is talk a little bit about Special Ops Aviation, and then leave some time at the end if you have any questions. I was excited about coming and talking. I talked to my family about it a little bit, and my wife gave me some great advice. She said, don't talk too long. She always tells me that, by the way, before I do these things. And then my 14-year-old son, I thought he had some pretty good advice too. He said, you should show a movie. So let's hit the next slide. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so these are the main things that we're going to talk about. First of all, the Army Special Operations Aviation Command. Over time, our modern day Special Ops Aviation really started with a failed mission in the desert when we're trying to rescue our hostages held in Iran. And I bring that up to start this because that's really a focus of a lot of the things that we're still doing today. And at that time, we had some pretty good pilots. We had a well-trained ground force that was ready to execute the mission. And we brought together the best pilots that we could at that time that were available. And we tried to equip them with the right airframes so that they could insert and do all the things that we needed to do to support our ground force. And we gave them the latest we could as far as technology, and it ended in failure. And we learned a lot of things from that. And the one thing that I continue to think about each day when we go to work from the command element is that we absolutely have to provide our folks with the best training and equipment that we can, and that's kind of our driving force. So our SOAC, we provide the Title 10 functions in support of Special Ops Aviation elements. And a couple things we're going to talk about today, the same themes that we've heard most of the speakers talk about. Readiness, lethality, and survivability and modernization. Okay, next slide. Humans are more important than hardware. This is one of our soft truths. And we put a lot of time and effort into developing our soldiers, the men and women that fly our airframes, and those that support them. And that starts in Green Platoon, our Special Operations Aviation Training Battalion. And that's really where we give our folks the fundamentals that they're going to need to be successful supporting our forces.
Good morning. I'm Sergeant Major Webb. I'm the Sergeant Major for our SOAC. Obviously you just heard the three things we're going to talk about this morning, the three pillars and how soft aviation gets after those. And readiness being number one, and it's the Army's number one, so it's our number one. So when you talk about readiness within the RSOAC, people are very important to us, and we start with that through Green Platoon. Green Platoon is our foundation level of instruction, so when we get all new officers and enlisted soldiers in, we bring them in, we put them in a common department and through EGP, and that's where they build the core fundamentals to know what a Night Stalker is. And it's through that process where they learn to shoot, move, and communicate, and build the camaraderie and teamwork to be successful as a Night Stalker in the long term. So that's where the foundation of being a Night Stalker starts, is right there in Green Platoon, and that is our number one readiness model where we get started.
Okay, so I see a lot of cabs. I know everybody's represented out here. I'll just tell you that we've kind of changed some of our operating procedures as far as how we bring in our the talent to fill the ranks. And the cabs know we are going to continue to come and talk to your folks and assess them, right? And kind of our pact is that we're not going to take your folks right before you deploy, and that's still true today. But it doesn't mean that we may not want to talk to them. And actually, we've been talking to quite a few of them here this week, which is great. But even if we do get to the point to assessing them, we understand that we are a small subset of Army aviation, and that you all have your mission as well, as far as all the different requirements we have. So that's kind of our pact, and we'll stay true to that. We have kind of expanded our recruiting efforts. We're, in addition to the Title X requirements for Special Ops Aviation, our SOAC is also the air staff for USASOC. And so we spend a lot of time looking at Green Berets and how we make Green Berets and continue to fill all the ODAs that we need to. Well, the same subset applies to the Special Ops Aviation. And if we're not manning our training classes, then we're not going to have the pipeline to man our aircraft and continue to be successful. So some of the things that you'll see nowadays that you probably did not see in the past is we have more of a social media presence, including Facebook and Twitter and now Instagram, so you can look for us there. And it's all about trying to attract talent, the right people, and that's really the start of it for us. And Mr. Greenwood, you want that little trainer?
Hey, I'm Dave Greenwood. I'm the Command Chief Warrant Officer at our SOAC. Forgive our transitions, it's just the way the system's set up, but I'm just here kind of to further develop the readiness aspects. So training today's force, to win against the near-peer threat. That's a new challenge, and it continues to drive our readiness and our commander's priorities. The 160th SOAR uses sustained readiness model and has since before the war began. And that keeps us in a band of excellence to always be able to provide ready forces for our ground combat commands. And currencies in all environments is kind of the base foundation that we build upon so that we are ready to go to any location in the world and provide our skill sets to our ground forces. That includes desert, mountain, overwater, urban, and we're entering into other environments that we're considering now of CBRN, work cyber, and all the other places that we're going to have to learn to be comfortable in and be able to execute just like we do today in our coin fight. Because we ask a lot of our Night Stalkers, there's a lot of initiatives that help speak to readiness, and preservation of the force and family, or we call it POTF, is the acronym that you might hear, is one of those investments we're making in our soldiers' readiness. It's very important that we, as we are limited in our manning, and we're getting after recruiting to fix that, that we keep our current manning healthy. And so with the preservation of the force and family program, it helps us to establish institutions where it works off the 4 pillars of physical, human, psychological, spiritual, and social performance. Things like functional fitness activities that keep our soldiers healthy, get them fixed and back to it with physical therapists, strength trainers that can look at an injury and get that soldier healthy and back into the fight quicker. And not to mention that the way we deploy, the stress that puts on, we provide behavioral health, psychology, and other spiritual wellness through the chaplaincy that makes a whole soldier a little bit more ready and healthy, and hopefully, jury's still out, provide some longevity to the manning that we do receive within the regiment. Next slide. So we're going to transition into lethality. Another soft truth in special operations is that special operations forces cannot be mass produced. And this means that we go to war with the soldiers we have today. In the next fight, there won't be time to ramp up, and therefore we must be ready to meet our adversary with what we have. The first step we are undertaking is the development of advanced tactics training. We call it SOAT, Special Operations Advanced Tactics Training, but as we progress in this training, and the regiment runs this effort, where we use academic simulations and then training against near-peer scenarios, we're building readiness. We're involving the greater Army Aviation enterprise along with us to help keep their survivability directorate and ours synced up in spite of any equipment differences. The bottom line is this effort, it's a holistic approach to meld the soldier, the machine, and the tactics as a combined solution against near-peer threats. And we're transitioning now from owning the night to owning the spectrum, and that will help us prepare for multi-domain operations. Another initiative we are undertaking is the validation of the unit, and I'm going to let the DCO, the commander, because that's the commander's program, talk about what we've changed recently to get after unit validation at Echelon. Sir?
Okay, so I think certification of leaders is something that we've done. It's been pretty solid for a long time. And what we're talking about there is, first of all, standard training pipeline, similar to what all aviation units do. And then when it comes time for that progression to fully mission qualified or flight lead or air mission commander, the exercises that we use for those evaluations are very complex, difficult training resources with a lot of extra resources that we put into that. That's been solid for a while, and we're pretty happy with that. What we've started to do recently, though, and it's worth talking about, is the validation of our units, okay? And so the picture we got here, I like this because it's a rock drill, right? And you've seen them, and you've been there, and you've been a part of them. But the validation for us is the commander's involvement. That's the piece that's been critical for us. And the reality is our forces have been and will continue to be consistently deployed. So we're not so much in the piece where we're trying to validate a unit so that they can deploy. We're validating a unit that may already have a portion of them deployed. That's the reality. So really, when the commander and the staff and the team go forward, all right, get a little feedback here, and the team go forward to work with that battalion headquarters and their staff, it's in conjunction with the same certification that we talked about. So there's flight lead rides going on, and multiple players, external assets, multi-state, strat air. There's probably some FARP drops going along at the same time. That's been kind of the trend, and that's just a piece of it. It's to ratchet up the level so that we can train our units to the point of failure. It's been very successful. And by the way, not all those evaluations result in a successful evaluation. Sometimes there are things that we need to go back and turn and look at a little bit more in depth, either as an individual, as a crew, or as a unit. But that ability for that mentorship at level has been very important for us. Okay, next slide, please. Sorry, I failed to talk about the Gray Eagle, and that really flows into this slide, though. So we're now fielding our second extended range Gray Eagle company, and that's been a great asset for us, and will continue to be a major player for us as we move forward. Okay, so quality is better than quantity. Quality is better than quantity. I say that because I started talking about the number of people that we're feeding into the pipeline. The reality is, if we don't have the right people and they're not passing the right wickets, not progressing as we want, then we're going to stop and we're going to continue to move on with another person or another element. And so some of the survivability and the modernization that we've been looking at is going to continue to be important. And these new white phosphorus NVGs that we've been working with are worth talking about.
I'm back. Hey, some of our initiatives, and these are just a few of them, the 160th has a history of trying to get on the cutting edge of things to make us more lethal, or more ready, or more capable to go and own the night. So white phosphorus goggles is just one place that we've invested, and it's a ground up. It's pilots that have seen ground equipment that have put them on their face and go, wow, this is better. And going through all those processes through SIMO to figure out how we can gain access for testing and evaluation. And the process has taken quite some time, but we've really made huge leaps in the last year of fielding white phosphorus goggles to our air crews. The difference maker, and I'll point you to the slide here, and it's, forgive the media doesn't really necessarily bring it out, but I assure you if you can get a pair of white phosphorus goggles and put it on and you have experience with the green ones, you'll say, wow, difference maker. And I'll just bring you to the forefront of the slide. On the left is the current AMVIS 6 that is out for aviation grade goggles. And on the right, same picture with the white phosphorus. And ignore all the light and the halo things that are down there because there is some better, but the visual acuity in low contrast and low light environments between the white and green can be seen in the split image, where on the left you really can't see that undulating terrain. But in the right, you can actually see the difference between shadows and where the moon is enlightening stuff. So if I were navigating through that, on the left side I might not see that valley that's on the right of the picture that I'm picking out to move down, but on the right it gives it. And then as an attack helicopter pilot, things that we've seen with white phosphorus goggles, being able to pick out, just in training, targets inside of beaten zones that we've been shooting rockets at for years was always a difficult thing in the past, but the visual acuity the white phosphorus has given us is a game changer. It's not, it's not a magic pill, however, they're still goggles, but that is one thing that we're trying to put in the hands of the Night Stalkers as quickly as and we can financially do it. And those changes are happening, and we're sharing them with our aviation enterprise as well to let them see the difference, so that hopefully they go down the same road we do in the future when it's affordable. The Block 3 Little Bird Mel B upgrades. We are executing and continuing with our plan to upgrade the Mel B. The aircraft is going to have more lift capacity than we currently have. We're gaining back some capability through some partnerships on power and drivetrain that are going to give us approximately 500 pounds of capacity that on a 5,000 pound aircraft, that's pretty good. Now, and that'll give us some latitude to put other systems on that we currently will have to we trade for ground force weight, not unlike a Vietnam era aircraft that it's been, where you're trading gas and bullets and for people and capability. So we're increasing that capability, and that's for our ground forces. So we're trying to give whatever all of our thoughts are. How do we get helicopter modifications that are going to provide the ground force more capability? And that follows into our Block 2 47G, which we're going down the road of having some more commonality with the 47F and milled construction of the airframe. And we expect that we'll continue to modify our G models with the Block 2 for the next several years to trade out our fleet, as they've been warbirds in combat for 17 plus years now, constantly deployed. And even though they've been modernized, some of our aircraft are Vietnam era tails. So as we modify, that's an investment that SOCOM is making to continue our capabilities for a decade to come, which takes us to future vertical lift. We are nested with future vertical lift, and I'll let the boss talk about that a little bit more.
Okay, so I told you before, we're tied with aviation, absolutely with future vertical lift. You heard the Vice say it this morning. We absolutely must modernize. Okay, that doesn't neglect our requirements to continue to sustain and upgrade the fleet that we have, because ultimately you got to be ready to fight tonight with what you have. All right, so we'll continue to do that. With future vertical lift, we do have a member on the cross-functional team, and one of the main things that we're trying to do with future vertical lift now is to be in at the foundational level, okay? And so that we can make our requirements known, and as Mr. Greenwood just said, it's not just our requirements to fly the aircraft, it's to fly the aircraft to support our customers, the ground forces that we support, right? So there's a couple of things that we feel like we need that are very important for future vertical lift. One is going to be air-to-air refuel capability. I think that's incredibly important, especially to sustain the flexibility that we feel that we're going to need. We can continue to talk and look at the future operating environment, but the truth is there's a lot that's unknown, and so we have to have as much flexibility as we can have, okay? So air refuel is incredibly important for us. The other thing is air transportability, okay? That's very important because we can't be in a position that we're going to have to that's how we feel for our element, and that's why we're involved at the foundational level, okay? Next slide. Okay, this is kind of the wrap-up slide as we get ready to transition to questions. General Gaylor mentioned yesterday culture. Culture is incredibly important, and we've talked a little bit about how we're committed to that, and that's not going to change. Postured and ready, the sustained readiness model, allowing our forces to continue to have a highly trained status so that if we need them in one area, we can deploy them there, or if we need them in another area, then we can take them and divert them. And we've done that very recently, where we had a small force that we were ready to send on an exercise in support of one geographic combatant commander. And when that exercise was changed fairly close to the timeline to deploy that force, we were able to use the same force and deploy them to Afghanistan to conduct combat operations, okay? And just like Dave was talking earlier about the different environments and the readiness and the currency, the same force was able to shift from one theater to the other and still be incredibly effective upon arrival, okay? And then be adaptive and innovate, okay? So we'll continue to do that, and that's gonna be important as we move forward. Before we move to questions, I did just want to say one closing piece that, again, from the RSOAC perspective, our focus is on modernizing and taking care of the elements out beyond the headlights. But we couldn't do any of that without our industry partners. And that's why it's very important for us to come to Quad A, and all the interactions that we've had have been very helpful for us. We definitely appreciate the help. Next slide, and we'll take any questions you have.
Okay, folks, wait for me to get to you if you have a question, or we will not be able to capture it on the video. And then other people watching the video will go, what were they saying? So does anybody have any questions? Questions? I need a hand. So what? Far left. Far left. There's a question. Hang on. We're walking. We're walking. We're walking. Stand by.
Hi, Garrett Ream, Flight Global. To what extent will FARA replace the Little Bird?
Okay, well, that's a great question. It depends. So we're at the point now that we're continuing to develop the concepts, and then we're going to continue to evaluate how well we're able to match our needs with what we can provide in field. So just like Device said earlier, we're going to have the opportunity to fly it and test it out and see how well it meets our needs.
Anybody else? Got a couple more minutes.
All the way in the back there.
Do you see any hands? Oh, where's that? Somebody have a hand over here? Oh, here we go. Walking, walking, walking.
That's all right.
Hello, sir. My question has to do with the maintenance of the night vision goggles, particularly the service plan. I know the SOF community has been working with the White Fox for quite a while. What is the long-term goal of the big Army and / anyone else involved to address the changeover from green to white and or upkeep?
Wow. Sustainment is a very important part of everything we look at, and as we went on this trek to become white phosphorus pure, we're still in the transition for our back shops to be able to have those capabilities that we've had with green for year. I believe that the Army plan is not yet fully set on a transition for the white phosphorus, but we felt it was important enough for our formation and the scale of our formation, so a little easier to manage. But we're still working through our back shops, building their capability to work on them the same as the green, and otherwise it's back with manufacturing for any repairs that are significant, tube replacements and all. There's some challenges with how the high quality tubes that, it's a pair of tubes, so the matching of those tubes is critical to not making pilots have some sort of weird sensation or crew members if they have one. You can imagine one tube being out of focus like in the old days with the full face fives. We're avoiding that, and so that quality control of when they are built is still critically, we're counting on the manufacturer quite a bit, but we are transitioning that into our capabilities.
Okay, we got one more. One more question anywhere? All right, that's it.
Thank you.
You're wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks. Hey, thanks, John. Well, thanks, John, and we appreciate you and the team coming in and filling in.